Hello and thank you for joining me again. This is going to be another video on how to assemble my tank tracks. Specifically today I'm going to be working on my Sherman tracks. I know what you're thinking. I've already done a video on how to assemble my Sherman tracks. That said, I did that video quite a while ago. I've done a lot more tracks recently and I've got a lot more practice at assembling tank tracks. This is just a massive pile of some of my tank tracks. This represents about half of what I sell on eBay currently. So having gotten a lot more experience under my belt, I've learned a few new tricks and I want to share them with you. It tends to make them a little bit easier from what I was showing last go round. In this segment, I'm going to cover what you get when you order a set of my Sherman tracks. Like most of my track offerings, you will get two packages. They'll be labeled Sherman with the type. This example that I have here is T51s, and then it will tell you the scale, 1/35, whether it's left or right side, and whether it has duckbills, yes or no. Now, a very interesting point here. What are duckbills? Duckbills, this is a normal non-duckbill type of track here. I'll bring it up so that you can see it a little bit better. This is a set of track with duckbills. Duckbills are extensions that were mounted on the outside of the tracks, which just extended their width a little bit, therefore making their weight balance more distributed and kept them on top of snow and mud better than tanks not equipped with duckbills. Also, when you order the tracks, you'll get a small spool of wire. This is typically 26 gauge florist wire. You can use jeweler's wire if you'd like, but I find that it's a little bit more expensive and not as stiff. And for this, the stiffer the wire, typically the better. Something you'll notice is you get here over 100 tracks. You only need 75 tracks, 75 links rather, to finish a set of Sherman or M3 tracks. Most American tanks were built to utilize 75 links in their tracks. That doesn't necessarily mean all of them, where I'm not an expert on American armor by any means. But for the most part, you're going to be looking to do 75 links in one chain of tracks. I include the extra because some of them will break as you're taking them off the carrier medium. Some of them will break as you're assembling them. Resin is brittle, so keep that in mind. I also include extra in case you want to mount spare links on the vehicle anywhere, or if you want to have scatter, or if you want to do tracked armor, whatever you want to do, you'll have the extra and the ability to do so. The other thing to note is, why are the tracks sighted left versus right? Sherman tracks were made one track fit both sides of the tank. The reason why my tracks are sighted is because rather than have the wire going all the way through the track and having that wire pin be visible, on one side of the track, I printed a pin head so that it looks like the pin is inserted from the outside of the link, which is the way that it would have been done. And then the other side is where the wire slides in from. So if you build them correctly, you'll never even see the wire. If you do happen to have any of the wires hanging out the opposite side, they'll be on the inside of the vehicle, covered with mud, or very hard to see unless you're picking up the model and turning it upside down in your hands. All right, in this short segment, I'm going to be covering what you need to assemble my tracks. Of course, you need the tracks that you purchased, and you need the wire. Today, I'm going to be using wire off of this leftover spool here. I do recommend that you get it as straight as you can, and if you have any kinks, just cut them off or maybe use pliers to straighten them out. But if your wire is kinked up very badly, you're going to have a hard time feeding it through. Like I said earlier, this is 26 gauge wire, florist wire. You can pick up an entire spool of this stuff, which is like 250 feet approximately, at Hobby Lobby or Michael's for usually under $5. The next thing that you're going to need is, for these Sherman tracks, you're going to need a file. There's a little bit of filing required on the track pad where the supports come off, because it is part of the hinge mechanism on these links. I use a diamond, square, flat, and fairly aggressive file. This is more aggressive than, say, a Tamiya file. Just works faster. Tweezers are always handy, especially for removing from the carrier medium. These tweezers are the self-clamping type. Sometimes they're handy, especially if the pins are tending to fall out on you. Then these tweezers are very handy because you can clamp a strip together, put some daubs of super glue on there, and use these tweezers to hold it and mist it with the setting spray, not get it all over your hands. Wire snips. I don't use my expensive wire snips for these, not even for removing from the carrier medium. I just find that the resin is harder on the wire snips than the plastic, and I don't want to ruin my good high quality snips for working with resin, or more importantly, the wire. Pliers. I prefer pliers that don't have any teeth on the inside. They're just smooth. I really like these pliers because they're bent. They're needle nose but bent and easy for me to see around and work with. And in this case with these Shermans, I will use these to hold links as well as to guide the wire in. Pin vise, always handy to have a pin vise. You're not going to need to open up the holes on the Sherman. They almost always print 100% clear because of how large they're able to be. But you can use the pin vise. This is the new technique that I've learned to align the links together, and it makes getting the wire in much quicker, much easier, and you have less breakage than if you don't use the pin vise. The other thing is, for the Shermans, I find that the best bit to use is a number 77. They're very brittle. I sell them. I don't sell them to make money off of them. I just sell them for what they cost me to get, and I'll add them to an order if you purchase them. But if you want to save money on them and you do a lot of modeling like I do, you're going to be best just to go onto Amazon or someplace and buy a whole mass of number 77 bits. Then magnification, always good. Also, resin is very brittle, so you want to have eye protection. That's, for me, I use these. Not the best eye protection in the world, but you're going to want them. I also like to use this head piece here. I use this one when I'm wearing glasses because I can have the glasses on as well as this, and it takes my magnification up to 6x. That is not necessarily required for these Sherman tracks. They assemble fairly easily usually, but use the level of magnification that you want. The other thing, because I am using a file on these, I have a tub of water nearby. This is so that I can dip my file in this and then sand on the track link and not create resin dust. Resin dust is very harmful for you, so if you are going to use the file without wetting it first, then make sure you're wearing a mask, a dust mask or respirator as you're doing this, so that you don't hurt yourself with the resin dust. You have been warned. Don't give yourself cancer. Okay, these links that I'm going to be working with today are T84s. I needed to test them for a customer, and so this is what's left over off of that block so that I'm not ruining another block. Remember to have your eye protection on, and what we're going to work on right now is removing these from the carrier block. Now you'll see here as I come up close what I mean by supports. This is a tall support which supports this upper guide horn. You can see here it's in place. And then there's a series of small, short supports that support the outside of the bottom guide horn, and these two are what supports the track pad itself. So these don't come off completely cleanly, so that's what you have to file down off of the track pad. If I show it to you at this angle, hopefully you'll be able to see it. It's very hard to see detail in raw resin, but hopefully here you'll be able to see the track pad with those supports going down into it. And that's what we need to clean up. This is the front of the T84 tracks. For removal, I go from the back side. First thing I do is I snip this top support, and I don't snip it all the way through. I just give it a half snip. And then I snip these bottom supports. And again, I don't snip them all the way through. I just snip them about halfway. Resin being as brittle as it is, if you tried to snip it all the way through, you could actually break the link itself. But by snipping just halfway, what breaks is the support that you're wanting to take off of there. Now I'm going to move it down here where I can actually see what I'm doing, and quickly just snip off this row of tracks. Now here's the other tip I'll give you, is once you get the first row off, or each progressive row, snip off those, or just break off those tall supports so that they're not in your way. So now I can go through and just quickly and easily snip these supports halfway. The way these laid out, each row has 16 track links. That one went popping out of there, as did that one. Now I've got all 16 out, tip them over. Some of them will come out. The ones that don't just drop off, you just need to grab your tweezers and or your fingers and do a little bit more wiggling and finish breaking those supports off and get them out of the way. Now this is a good time while you're here at this point to just go ahead and snap off those tall supports so that when you go to do your next row, you're ready to just start grabbing them and snipping them. All right, to clean up these links is also fairly simple if you can hold on to them. They are small and fiddly. Another thing that you need to assemble these that I should have mentioned is patience. If you don't like small fiddly things, these are not going to be for you. If you're experienced with furl model tracks or any link on link tracks, these are actually typically easier to get together than most of those. So what I do here is I just make one pass going through and cleaning up any supports that are still attached to them. There we go. Now just clean up our work surface here, keep it as clean as we can. Next stage of cleanup is I like to verify that the holes go all the way through. Now you notice here I didn't even, this is my pin vise, but I'm not even twisting it. It just, there I missed the hole. Right there, slips right on through. And then on the back side, this is your pivot point for the neck between the two hinges. And so you'll notice in real life, these clamps would not be permanently mounted there, they'd be coming off. But in this miniature scale, what I do is I print the two guide horns and clamps on one of the links so that we can put the next link in between here and then slide our wire in, and that acts as our pivot point and hinge. So I check some of them and make sure that they're clear. Really, with these Shermans, they print reliably clear because there's enough mass there that I can print a large hole. I mean, this this number 77 drill bit here just slides right through. Most of my other links, I don't have that kind of luxury of such a large point where I can put my pinholes. So they're typically not anywhere near as clear. Okay, so I've tested 4 out of the 16 there. In taking these off, I had no breakage yet. Remember, there's enough extra that if you do have some breakage, then you can just skip them, pass them by. If you find one that you don't like the way it formed, or the hole's not clear, whatever, just set it aside and come back to it later. Here we've got ready to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 links, because the 16th one went flying off my workbench and I don't want to fight the carpet monster to try to get it back. Next stage for cleanup, this is where we need our water and our file. So how much you clean up the guide horns and the support marks everywhere else is up to you. Remember that these would have been cast parts and they would not have been the cleanest and they would have had damage. So if you don't want to spend a lot of time cleaning up the guide horns like I'm doing right here, that is totally fine and your prerogative. But what you will need to clean up is the track pad from the bottom side so that it can slide into the next one. And it's that fast and simple. I just grab it, go at it with my semi-aggressive file here. It's a diamond file, but it's an inexpensive one that I bought from, I think, Hobby Lobby. And right here's one of the worst ones with those support links in there. But if I come at this and do about 10 brushes with that file, it's gone. Now I started to get a little bit of dust there, so I re-wet my file. And just dip the file every so often, or wear a dust mask, as I was saying. But keeping the dust down keeps your area cleaner as well, and it just, for me, is a simpler and smarter way to go about it. Now you've noticed I've not been cleaning up the guide horns too much. I typically try to do all of one step and then go back and do the other step, but for this demo I'm not too concerned about getting all my guide horns and the supports completely cleaned up. If I was going to be putting these on a kit, then you bet I would. And if I didn't clean up these track pads on the side here, then there's no way that these would fit in there. It's not a size issue so much as just the residual contact points of those supports has got to be filed away so that I can get the hinge points to line up properly. After doing this a time or two, I also, of course, know which side needs to be sanded. But if you're looking at the link, depending upon whether you're doing left side or right side, you'll learn which way to hold it by so that you're filing the correct side. Because you really shouldn't need to file the up side of the link as it's printing, which is the side with the hole through it. There shouldn't be any reason to file that down. It should just be the side that printed pointing down on the build plate, where those supports are holding it onto the build plate so that the print process can work. 3D printing is a pretty amazing process, but it is certainly not an exact science yet. Now I'm done with that cleanup. Took me just a couple minutes. Wipe off the file so we're taking care of our tools, and now we've got these cleaned up and ready to go track links. I'm done with the water and I can move that out of the way now too. Alright, now for the assembly stage. Here is where we need our pin vise, our snips, again so that we're cutting the wire this time, and our needle nose pliers to help us guide them. Okay, so to assemble these two links, I take two links to start with, and I slide one track pad in between the other two guide horns. It is a tight fit. If you press too hard or don't get it lined up properly, it will break off one of the guide horns. You've got plenty of extra, don't worry about it. Then I take these pliers, and because these track pads are as thick as they are, I can take and squeeze them together. I would have to squeeze really, really hard before this shattered that pad. It is doable, but it's not as big of an issue on these links as it would be other tracks, which is why I don't recommend that on my other tracks, because one, their guide horns on German tracks are down the middle, and two, the pads themselves aren't usually robust enough to be able to hold up to that level of pressure. But in this case, they do just fine. So once I get them lined up and squeezed together and as square as I can by eyesight here, I then take this pin vise and I just start working it through and try to get it to slide between the two links. Well, not between the two links, into the hole and line them up for each of the links. Now, a twisting motion certainly helps, but what's key important here is you're not actually trying to drill it back out. You're just trying to get the two lined up. This is also why I use translucent resin, so that you can see when the drill bit is passing through, and more importantly, when the drill bits come out this back side here, the other side, into that other guide horn. If you press too hard or go too deep or far with your wire, then you could snap it right off. Now, I don't expect you to be able to see this, but that drill bit, number 77 drill bit, is through both of these pads and tying the two together. This is another tip. When I get the first one where I want it to be, I take and insert my drill bit to the point where I can't go any deeper than that. That way, if I had more of my drill bit out, you know, if it was like this, then I wouldn't know when to stop, and I could keep going and either drill all the way through or push this side of the guide horn off. But by just loosening it up a little bit and seating it down in there, now the drill bit's going to hit the other guide horn when I'm all the way through, and it's not gonna push out anymore. Now, carefully and gently slide that back out. Take our wire that's been provided and slide it in the hole to replace the drill bit. Now, if you need to, you can use these pliers to get it to go all the way into the second guide horn. You've only got the 2 hinge points here, so it's not like a German track where you've got multiple hinge points, and if you're not all the way through, it will still hold together. These here, if it's not all the way through, it's not going to stay together. Now here's a tip. When I cut this, I don't cut it close. Not yet. I cut this about 1/4 inch long, and then I just bend it down to get it out of my way a little bit. Bend it back, bend it down, bend it however you need to bend it, just to get it out of the way. I do that so that if I need to take them apart, I have something that I can pull it back apart. If I happen to drop it or break it or do something like that, I can get it back apart and not have to start over with a different link of tracks. Now on to the second track. I've got these two, so it makes it easier because I got more to hold on to. Slide the track pad of the one in between the guide horns of the others. Take my pliers, squeeze them together to get them lined up as much as I can that way. Take my number 77, pinch them together some more if I need to, and start sliding it in. Right there it went. I'm part way in. I drop the pliers so that I can flip it over and see when that drill bit goes all the way through to the other side. It now is. Pull that off, grab my wire, start sliding it in. Again, it's easier to see from the top side if you're all the way through. Grab these pliers and just push it a little bit to seat it. Make sure that it's all the way there. Snip it off. Bend it just, you don't even have to bend it much, just a bit to get it out of the way. Now here's the next tip. On this, what I want to show you is, here's my set of 3 that are done. Here's my new one that I'm doing. Notice what side I'm putting it on. I'm putting the old set in between the guide horns on the new one, not vice versa. I'm not putting the new one in between the guide horns on the old one. The reason for that is, if I break a guide horn, I don't want to break it on the ones that are already attached. I want to break it on the one that I'm attaching so that I just toss it aside and be done with it. If I put it in here and I broke this one, then I'd have to pull this apart and redo that work. But if I put it on here and I break it, well, no harm, no foul. Just set it aside and move on with a different link. So here, grab it, squeeze it together that way, squeeze it together that way. Start with my pin vise. If it doesn't start sliding in easily, then just try aligning it a little bit differently. See if you can get it to go. And if you do happen to have some that just don't want to go, remember you've got plenty of extra. Set them aside. Use them as your scatter or your extra track links or whatever. Remove, grab my wire, slip it on in there. Use my pliers to get it to slide all the rest of the way through. And into the other guide horn. Every once in a while, what you might want to do is grab them and kind of pull and make sure that they don't hinge open. If you missed one of these guide horns, then it would break open. Let me show you what I mean by that on this next one. Snip that long, and that's another reason to leave that long, because you could then fix it. All right, so I'm intentionally going to do this one incorrectly. Slide the two together like we were talking. Grab them with my pliers. Don't know if you can hear my cat back there, but she's the most vocal cat I've ever had the experience of knowing. Start putting that through. Okay, and I don't have to flip this over every time because I've got my drill bit set to where it can't go any deeper. Pull that back out, and here I'm going to intentionally not put that all the way in. I'm going to slide it. Might have to reline that one up because I just sent it flying across my desk. It is easier if you have more of this wire spooled out. So I'll do that right now so I'm not fighting myself with that all the time. Get this lining back up again after it went on its flight. Pull it back out. Okay, so I can see this wire because of the translucency. I know that it's all the way through. I'm going to pull it back a little bit so that it's not, and now I'm going to cut it long. Now, if I don't fix that, then if I pull, it's going to hinge open. You can see right there what I'm talking about with it hinging open. Instead of it just swiveling up and down, it has an open pivot point. So here, the way to fix that is to put it back in there. And then because we left some extra, we grab our pliers and we feed this down through, watching it and making sure it gets seated in the second guide horn. And now that won't hinge open anymore. And that's also how you straighten your tracks. As we're assembling them, they're going to have a tendency to assemble in a curve just because of the way we're pinching them together and working on them. But once we do that, it'll open right up. All right, I don't know how long this video is to this point. Looks like 12 minutes, and we've got 5 links attached. That's not very fast, but I've also been moving slow and without my great magnification. So now I'm going to quit talking to you, and I'm going to just hammer out these next links, and then I'll tell you the total time that it took to get it done. Or where you can skip to if you don't want to watch each and every link. I don't want to speed it up because I don't want people thinking I'm playing with the timeline here and trying to sell these things for something they're not. But at this point, you can start listening to music and you don't have to listen to my droning voice. I want to point out, I just broke one. Pull it aside, toss it aside, move on. It's gonna happen. Don't worry about it. All right, back to music. All right, here I've got one that I don't like the way it's going together. So I'm going to pull it apart. Again, the reason why we use the extension on the wire, and set it aside. I don't know if it was misformed. It just did not want to line up, and I was tired of spending the time working with it because we've got plenty of extras. You'll probably be tired of hearing that by now. Cutting a bit off because it was pretty wrinkled. If you're ever not sure if it went all the way through, grab it at the edge of the link and then pull it out and check. That one did not go all the way through, so I'm glad I checked. You probably noticed before that I had to go back and re-link one of them in there because it hinged open, just like I was warning you about. But because I'd left enough extra wire snipped out the side, I was able to fix it. I'm sure by now I've gotten my headset in the way, so you'll tell that I went to my extreme magnification. That is why this is going much faster at this point. Alright, this is the last link I've got here. Right here I'm checking to make sure I've got them all seated all the way through by, like I was saying, expanding them out, trying to make them hinge open. I'd rather figure that out now so I can fix it than later. So here I've got them quickly assembled, and out of the 16 I pulled off the sprue. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 that are assembled here. Pulled 16 off. One of them went to the carpet monster as the sacrifice for this project. 3 of them went aside because I broke one, and 2 of them didn't line up the way I wanted. Now, here's the next step. I pull this little bit of wire back, or water rather, back towards me. And I'm going to take off the extreme magnification because I don't need it here and I don't need to be in your way. I come over here and I pull these out just a bit, intentionally, knowing that I'm taking it back out. Cut that off, and then I take my pin vise and I slide it back in so that the pin is not visible, the wire is not visible at all anywhere. You can, if you want, since it's on the inside, just snip it off flush. I'm sure for most folks that's probably okay. There's just a tiny little bit of wire hanging out there. Don't know if you'd even see it. But if you want it to be completely recessed, pull it out just a millimeter, snip it off, take your pin vise, and reseat the wire. Everything's lined up, so it shouldn't be an issue. Or just snip it off, your preference. If you have a problem for speed here, I'm just going to snip the rest of these off. Having the water here can be handy because I can snip and try to direct it into the water so that I don't step on them later. That sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. But if it's not there, then you never can do it. And now at this point, what we want to do, and I'll just grab one here from the side. My tip for doing this is line it up just the same. But when you run this guy in there, rather than cutting it off at a 1/4 inch, I like to leave this one with about 1 inch. That way I know where my segments are, and if I need to take it apart because I have a problem in another segment or I broke it or whatever, I have a point to take it apart, and I have it between links of approximately 10 tracks, so that if I'm putting it together and I'm on the 7th set of 10 and I'm almost done and I break the 2nd set, I don't have to start over. I just pull out that 1 set and go back at it. There we go. Assembled 2 segments a track. Total for assembling the 12 that we did there was 30 minutes, but at the teaching tutorial speed. If you just go about it with an audiobook or movie on in the background, you can hammer them out much quicker. You'll notice that the first 5 took me 12 minutes by themselves, and then the other 5 took much less than that. And then the rest of it was explaining and showing you how to connect the 2 segments. Again, it takes time, it takes patience, and if you're not wanting to put that kind of patience into it or time into your kit, then there's other solutions out there. You can use the rubber band tracks that come with them. You can find a set of link on length tracks, which take time to do and to get right, but they don't take as much time. But if you want to have something that goes on your kit and can have the link and sag and wrap around the sprocket exactly how you want it and sag exactly where you want it, like linkable tracks, then your choice is pretty much these or furls or model cast and some sort of resin or metal track link, and these are probably by far your most cost-effective offering. Even the aftermarket plastic workable link-on-link tracks I find take a few minutes each to put together. Ryefield is notorious for their wonderful workable Tiger track links, but the earliest version of those, you had to glue on each of the guide horns. So the linking them together wasn't much of an issue, but then afterwards to go in and glue on all the guide horns individually was very much a painful situation. Thank you for joining me. Like and subscribe if you want. Keep your eyes open. I'll be uploading more tutorials and other types of videos, hopefully more build logs than just tutorials. That's not the way it's been right now. And very soon I'm going to be uploading a video on how to assemble my Tiger 1 track offering, which is so far the easiest ones that I've done. They, because of their size, just almost fall together themselves. They're absolutely wonderful. Thank you again for watching, and have a great 2022.